Hi everyone, it's Jennie Black. Today we're going to be coloring contours on this cone flower by Power Poppy, and I really love to do that, but I wanted to show you the background that I used. It's a fun textured background that doesn't take too much work. It's kind of a watercolory look, but yet at the same time you get some texture. So what I did is I started off with a BV25. This is a color that was just introduced to me a couple weeks ago at boot camp, and I love it. It's one of the colors I did not own, and it's quickly growing as to one of my favorite colors. So I went ahead and I scribbled that on my acetate, and now I'm going to use a watercolor pen that's full of alcohol. This is just rubbing alcohol. I think I actually have 70 or 90% in here. Alcohol, you can get it at Walmart or any of your pharmacies and just put it in your aqua pen, or you can use a little tub of alcohol with a paintbrush. So that works also. So I'm gonna scoop up some color here. My brush is a little bit wet, but it's not super shiny, so it's not too wet. What I call a perfect brush is where the shine is gone. The shine is gone, it's not too shiny. So I'm just gonna go quickly around my whole image with this. I'm going to continue to keep re-inking my tip and just adding some color so you can follow along. And there it is. So that is my background. However, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little bit of texture to it. So I actually added in a little bit of B005. You don't really need to do that, but sometimes it's just fun to have a little bit of variation or extra fun added in. If my flowers were pink, I probably would have added a little bit of pink into my background. I've been doing this texture for years and years and years. However, I've never used this color, so I really like it. So now what I'm going to do is, since I don't have any alcohol on my table, I'm going to use my various ink refill, and I'm going to wet a piece of burlap. Here's my burlap. And now I'm going to just use my finger right here like this, and I'm going to go around with the wet spot on my burlap, and I'm just going to dab and then let it set. It starts to dilute where the wet fibers have touched my ink, and it dilutes the color in random little patterns. I want a little more color right here. There's not really enough to dilute right there, so I'm going to just add some more in. It's a very forgiving technique, and so you can always add more color whenever you want. And there's my background. It looks kind of funny right now, but once you have your image colored, it really pulls it together and it looks really cool. It means your flowers aren't just floating in air, it has a little bit of substance to it. So now let's get started on coloring our actual cone flowers. Okay, so here we are. We're going to go ahead and color our flowers, and we're going to add contour shape to each of our petals. If we colored our petals just with one color, they're not going to have any shape or life to them. They're going to look more like this. See how they look? They're pretty, but they're still flat. They don't have any life to them. And if you're going to spend the time coloring, you might as well just add a few more minutes and get more life to your image by adding some highlights. And so this way here, it actually makes the cone flower look like it's actually curved or a contour shape. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. It's a really quick and easy technique. So we're just going to get on our way here. Here I did some in different colors. I was just playing around. I don't usually use browns for flowers, but it's fall and I'm really trying to get into the season here. So let me show you one more here that happens to be sitting here. Is you can see the contour shape of my acorns. My acorns are kind of rounded, and so I put my highlight there in the center and I put my shading down here. What I do is I actually color in hills and valleys. So if you look at this acorn, the top of this hill would be right here on the top of the acorn, and the valleys are down here on the sides. The valleys don't get near as much light as the hill because the hill's sticking out closer to the light source. And so it's going to be lighter than the two sides. So that's how I color, that's how I get my dimension. You can change your light source to different sides, but for today we're just using a front and center so that we understand the technique of hills and valleys to color contours. So here are the colors that I've chosen for my petals. It's an E35, a YR24, a YR23, a YR21, and I also want a E51 to pull it together. So I'm going to start off with my E51. That's my lightest color, and I'm going to do a plan. I always do a plan to keep myself on track. If I don't do a plan, then I kind of get a little sidetracked and I forget to leave my white space. I cover up my white space, and it just doesn't seem to turn out as well. So let's go ahead and start off with my lightest color. I really like this color. It kind of has a little bit of a yellow tint to it, and it just works with my browns. So I'm putting my color down into my valleys, and I'm leaving my highlighted area white. That reminds me not to color in that area with my darker colors. This one here is a petal that's behind this petal, so I'll probably make this one a little bit darker. That's why I went ahead and colored the whole petal there. So this is when I do my study or my homework, and now I know, this one here is another one that's kind of behind. Now I know where my color placement is going to be. Let's go ahead and do this other flower really quick also. So we'll just add some down in here. Our other colors are going to be darker than this, so it's going to cover it up. But at least it leaves a plan or a map on where we're headed. You don't have to flick or color anything special. Just get the color on there to remind you where you want the most color. So there's my flower plan. Now that we have color already on the paper, it's not so intimidating to go with our dark color. I used to color light to dark, and now I color light for my plan, and then I go dark, medium, light. So there is my plan, and now I'm going to just jump right in with my dark, which is an E35. So I'm going to come down in here, and I'm just going to lightly add in some dark. I'm going to kind of flick towards my highlight, but I don't want to add too much of this color, otherwise I'm going to have a dark brown flower, and that's not exactly my desire. Here is a layer. You can see one petal is in front of the other petal, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of cast shadow back here with my dark color. And that pretty much does my shading for that flower. I'm going to do one flower at a time now. And so now I'm going to step down to my YR23, and I'm going to soften the inside edge of the previous color, pulling towards my highlight. I don't want to dilute the whole dark part, but I do want to soften the inside edge of it so that they softly blend together. So you just want to kind of blend the edge of that previous color and start pulling it out. Okay, so there's my second color. And now I'm going to step down to my third color, which is a YR21. I love this color. And now I'm going to start using more flicking motions. I'm going to soften that edge and start flicking towards my highlight a little more randomly. I want to keep that circle consistent all the way around. You can see my circle is kind of in the middle of each petal, and it's consistent. Without my plan, it would be easy to get off track there. You don't add a lot of each color because these little petals are not very large. And I still have white throughout my center. Some people like more white than others, and that's okay. I used to be afraid to leave white, and now I realize it's such a striking difference that I put it in. And so here is an E51. I'm going to go ahead and pull it together with that. And now I'm going to use much lighter, softer strokes, and I'm going to go in more of a flicking motion. So what I mean by flicking is just lightly touching the paper as I brush. So here we go. I'm going to pull this together now. I went from that side, and now I'm going to go from this side. And there are my petals. They're pretty much done already. So you can see that I left my highlight down here, but I did add all of my colors. You can always go back and add a little bit of softening if your lines are too dark. I would do that with your lightest color versus your blender color. However, if you really need to soften a color, you can go back with your blender pen and you can soften that color. Just don't bleach it all the way out. Right here I have a little boo-boo. I went outside the line, so I'm just going to take my blender pen and I'm going to softly touch it right here. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to color the stamen of our flower. So for that, I'm going to use my E40s. I really like these colors. So here's what I have, my E47, 44, 43, and a 41. You might not use all four of these, but I have them on hand just in case, because everybody colors differently, and sometimes we use more of one color than another. It never turns out exactly the same. So I usually collect groups of fours, and then sometimes I end up only using 3. So I'm going to start off making my plan with my lightest color. That color wasn't quite dark enough for me, so I'm going to go ahead and use that with a 43 instead. And so there is my plan. Now I'm going to go ahead and go in with my darkest color, my 47. I'm not going to use a lot of this. I am doing it in a circular motion because it's more of a sphere shape. And this one here is more of a cone shape. I'm going to step down to my E44 and I'm going to soften the inside edge of that previous color, not diluting too much of it, and start pulling towards my highlight. And now I'm going to go to my lightest color, which I'm going to use as a 43 this time. And there is my highlight right there. And there we go. So that's our flower itself. Now I'm going to go ahead and color the leaves. So I'm going to start off with my darkest color. I'm not going to start off with my lightest because these little stems are not very large and I don't want to have too much ink in them or they'll start bleeding outside the line. So there's my darkest color. Now I'm going to go to my next colors, which is a YG63, and I'm going to add those in. And then I'm going to go to my lightest color, the YG03, and I'm going to finish it off. And there's my flower. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial today and come back to Split Coast Stampers for more educational tutorials on how to color your images. Have a great day.